Just keep in mind that what's obvious to you might not be obvious to a young child. That can help remind them that you love them unconditionally, that their self-worth is intrinsic. But as soon as we start saying, don't be lazy, oh, you're such a brat, that was really selfish of you, those types of words are extremely dangerous. My husband and I have 5 kids and our 2 youngest are autistic. Ezra, our 7-year-old, has level 3 autism, which mainly means he needs a little bit more support. He's nonverbal and can communicate through an iPad. Simon is our youngest. He's 3 years old and he has level 1 autism with no intellectual delay. We celebrate Ezra and Simon's milestones whenever they hit them, and we're excited for the future to see what else they can do. Here's 12 things not to say to an autistic child. And these things are actually from autistic adults who have commented on our channel. So they're legit, so listen up.
Why would you listen?
This isn't professional advice, but it is good advice. So, number 1 is don't look at me that way. Don't give me that look. This is assuming that the person giving the look that's undesired knows what look they're giving. But what if they don't? What if they're so focused on what you're trying to say that they don't even realize what look they're giving you? This is a great example for parents and caregivers and even teachers to teach off the field. You'll hear me say off the field. I just want to let you know what it is. If you were a coach, would you only teach on the field? Would you never practice with your team? No, that's ridiculous. Of course you practice and teach off the field. But a lot of parents only teach while there's a game on. Think about that. Do you only correct and tell your child to do or not do something when emotions are high, when you're angry or running late or a huge mess is made? Or do you teach off the field? You can make this a fun game. You can take a mirror and make faces at the mirror, have your child take turns. If they actually are glaring or gaping or staring or sneering, whatever reason you have for saying, don't give me that look, show them in the mirror what look they're actually giving you and teach them what to do instead. Whether your child's autistic or not, you might have to teach them, hey, it matters what your face does, because people might misunderstand it and take offense. The next thing to be aware of is using sarcasm. So please don't say, oh, wonderful, terrific, great, when you actually mean the opposite.
Don't be sarcastic.
My autistic sons have to process a lot of things to understand communication. They have to try and process facial expression and body language and tone of voice, and then put sarcasm on top of that. And that's a lot of pressure for an autistic kid to try and understand the meaning of your words when you're actually saying the opposite of what you mean. If you feel it's necessary, then teach your child what sarcasm is. Give them examples of what situations might be like and when people might actually use sarcasm, and then you can practice off the field, like I said before, and teach them that skill and not just introduce all these new things on the field. The next thing not to say to an autistic child is, don't give me that lip. Don't talk back. Now I've done this, I've said this to my neurotypical kids, and even with them, sometimes they'll look at me and be like, was that really talking back? Kids who are really logical might not realize that their words and their questions of why I have to do something are a little rude or blunt. What are some things that you can think of what not to say to an autistic child? Please put it in the comments. You never know what comment might bless someone else's life. The next thing is saying, don't do that, without explaining what that is. When you say, don't do that or stop that, you're assuming that the child understands what that is. And a lot of times an autistic child can get confused if you don't specify what it is. They might just stop everything and wonder what it is that they're doing wrong. I remember being glared at, like glared down by an adult when I was a kid. And I had no clue why. I didn't know why they were glaring at me. And I asked why that person was mad and they didn't answer. And now looking back, it probably was obvious and the adult just thought that I was being kind of annoying. But I sincerely didn't know why the adult was mad at me, why she was staring at me. So yeah, if you say to a child, cut it out, and they don't know what it means, then it can be really confusing. Just keep in mind that what's obvious to you might not be obvious to a young child. Now this next one, you might say, oh, that's obvious. No one should ever do that. But it happens all the time with autistic kids. They will just automatically start labeling. They'll label, you're lazy, you're a brat, you're rude, or this one, you're selfish. Those types of labels can be really dangerous because you're not identifying a behavior. You're putting a behavior into their identity. So please, no matter what your autistic child does, separate the behavior from the identity of the person, because they aren't a brat. They aren't selfish. They aren't lazy. It might seem like the behavior is that way, but it's more important to look at the motivation and look at what the child's experiencing and then try and see it through their eyes. You can have a much better picture on how to show empathy, how to help them be heard and feel seen, and then they'll listen to you a whole lot better because of that relationship and because they feel safe. But as soon as we start saying, don't be lazy, oh, you're such a brat, that was really selfish of you, those types of words are extremely dangerous. So let's just stay away from them. And keep in mind, the way you talk to your child is probably going to be the way they talk to themselves throughout their life. So maybe we can talk to our kids like we're on the same team. We post regularly of our unique normal, so please consider subscribing. The next one is assuming that they have a superpower. So tell me about what you do really well. Please don't ask this to an autistic person. If they want to share with you something that they do well, then they'll share it with you. But if they don't, then just let them be. This happens to me all the time as a mother of 2 autistic boys. People will ask, oh, what's his superpower? And I understand where they're coming from. They're trying to talk about something positive, which I do appreciate, but it's actually a very small percentage of autistic people who are super, super good at like one thing. What if they don't feel like they have a superpower or one thing that they're really good at, especially something they can show off? It's just unfair to put unrealistic expectations on kids, whether they're autistic or not. They shouldn't feel bad that they don't have some kind of superpower. We can't all be Superman. He's probably autistic though. Maybe you do have an autistic child who does something really well. Maybe they do have a superpower. They're really good with numbers, or they can remember dates or things like that. Whatever it is, please don't demand that they do it all the time and that they show it off to your friends and neighbors and everyone that comes over. The reason I say this is because any child, autistic or not, if they're given attention for one talent, then they start to connect their self-worth with that talent. If that's the only time they get positive attention from you, then they'll naturally just assume that, hey, my self-worth is connected to that talent. And we don't want that. We want our children to feel really strongly that they're loved unconditionally. By giving your child affection and attention, even when they haven't earned it in any way, they didn't come home with an A, they didn't sing a solo, but you just give it to them because they're your son or daughter, that can help remind them that you love them unconditionally, that their self-worth is intrinsic. Another thing that you should please, please, please never say to an autistic child is, you need to be more like so-and-so. You need to be more like your brother. You need to be more like your sister. Why can't you be more like your next door neighbor? Whether your child's autistic or not, this is not good to say, but especially to an autistic child, comparing them to a neurotypical child or to another autistic child is incredibly morally wrong. Usually the child's reaction is that they will try not to be like that person, and you run the risk of really hurting your relationship with your autistic child because now they see you are wanting them to be more like someone else when you should be encouraging them to be the best version of themselves. Next thing you should never say to an autistic person is, because I told you so. So what you're doing right now is you are denying them the opportunity to understand why they need to do something. I'm sure there's a really good reason why you're telling your child to do something. But if someone told you to do something and you honestly had no clue why, do you think that you'd feel good about doing it and keep a good relationship with that person if they said, do it because I told you so? Parenting is really about keeping that relationship, mentoring them, helping them choose the right decision, not just having them obey you. And so teaching them that because I said so from an adult is a good reason to obey is actually dangerous. You want your child to advocate for themselves. You want them to stand up for their rights, especially to an adult, because honestly, the world we live in, not all of them are trustworthy. Well, let's not go there. The next one is one that I actually felt as a kid. You're embarrassing me. Think about what you're really saying. You're saying that you care more about what other people think than you do about your children's feelings. I have chosen not to be embarrassed by my kids. I have 2 autistic boys and I want them to live life to their fullest. We actually lived in an RV and we traveled to all the national parks. That's the entire United States, guys. It took a long time. And we went everywhere with the kids. We went inside caves. We went on islands. We went, not scuba diving, but the other thing where you just like, what's it called? Snorkeling. When we traveled to all these places, having these adventures, we always included Ezra and Simon, our autistic kids. And did some people look at us weird when we had a meltdown? Yes. Some people did. Did some people not approve of our toddler leash around Ezra so he wouldn't, just like fall off Grand Canyon? Yeah, some people didn't approve of that. But I didn't care. I chose not to get embarrassed because I knew that my children's feelings and their ability to come with us and experience the world with us was so much more important than what stranger thinks about how I parent. You're always gonna have people who don't approve. It doesn't really matter. Push that aside. Please don't ever tell your autistic child, "You're embarrassing me." One time in the airport, I heard this little girl and she was just screaming, and I didn't see her because she was like around the corner, but you could hear her for sure. The thing that I was really impressed with was that even though this young child was obviously very upset and was loud, the mom was so calm the whole time. She didn't yell at her and say, "You're embarrassing me." She said these words, like literally verbatim. "I really want you to have the freedom to walk by yourself, but if you don't hold my hand, I'm going to have to carry you." I was like, that's amazing parenting. After the mom said that about wanting to give her freedom, the child stopped screaming. Good job for that mom, wherever you are. The next thing that you should never say to an autistic child is actually talking to someone else about your autistic child in front of them. This is something that I used to do all the time with our son, Ezra. So Ezra is 7 years old now. He's nonverbal, and it's very tempting to explain to someone else kind of about Ezra and have Ezra right there and just kind of pretend like he can't understand what I'm saying. But more and more, I realize he does understand what I'm saying. Even if he can't verbally express how he feels and what he wants yet, we're still working on that. I have to treat him as if, yes, he understands everything, because most likely he does. No matter what your child's age is, you want them to feel respected and valued. So this next one is yelling or raising your voice. We know we shouldn't yell at our kids, and yet we all do it. But hear me out here. When you have an autistic child and you yell at them, does it help their anxiety go down? No, it doesn't. Usually it makes their anxiety go up. When I was in my early 20s and I just started having kids, I would find myself yelling a lot. It was a big temptation. And so one thing that I would do to help, in case anyone out there, if this helps anyone, right? I would go up to my child and go really close to them. If I was like on the other side of the room, I would be more tempted to yell. But if I got close to them, that temptation definitely lessened, because I was so close to them that I saw their little cute face, right? And I could see their expression better. And I was so close to them that I knew that this would really hurt their ears if I yelled, right? And so it actually helped me not to yell by moving closer to them. And I would take a breath as I was walking to them, and that sure helped too. We all know that we can't learn as well when anxiety is super high. So when we yell and increase that anxiety in our kids, then are we teaching them? Are they learning? We actually decrease the chance of them actually learning, because their anxiety is up and their defense is up, and so they're not going to be in learning mode. So let's try to create habits to help us be calm. Every child deserves a parent or caregiver that teaches them off the field, that has patience with them, that helps them feel seen and heard. And I'm gonna be blunt here, autistic kids need patient caregivers. With my autistic kids, there's increased misunderstanding and miscommunication, and patience is a necessity. 12 Signs of Autistic Stimming video is here. It's my favorite. And our autism playlist is here. Remember, if you have an autistic child, you're in good company.